words I spoke in the original phonograph. A little piece of practical poetry. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Better Life, The Collectors. And I know it's been a little while since I've done one of these, and basically the reason is because I had a couple of surgeries and I've been sick and all kinds of stuff. So I apologize for my shortcomings, but we are very lucky today to have Jack Stanley and Brett with us today. His dyslexic genius from his myriad thousands of podcasts. I remember when he was on last time, he said, we just did our 2000s. I went on the other day and it was like 2,500 or something already. The man's a rocket ship. And anytime I need to do something, I'm like, gee, I wonder if I could glue that or fix that, or I wonder what that needs. You can go on and just search his videos, and he's done extensive videos about whatever thing you're thinking about doing, and we appreciate that. And Jack, of course, is well known in every corner of not only the collecting but the historical parts of this amazing hobby that us and sometimes I think only another handful of old men are also doing. But so I appreciate you all here today. And today, the topic is one very close to my heart. Matter of fact, when I started collecting, I thought that's all I was going to collect was Edison diamond discs. Yeah, that's not what happened. But Edison is one of my favorites, and the diamond discs, I think, are just an amazing part of history and speak volumes about the way Edison thought, in my mind. Gentlemen?
Nice to join you.
Start? Always a pleasure. Where would you like to start talking about Edison and his infamous diamond discs?
Infamous, okay. Brett, you want to go, or do you want me to go, or what?
You're the history guy.
The diamond disc is one of the most incredible things ever developed in the field of sound recording, if you think about it. Especially when you think it all started like around 1908, 1909. They started their research on this. And Edison was fortunate to have some of the most remarkable chemists and researchers and idea guys to create this phenomenal product. And his chemist was named Jonas Ellsworth. And Jonas Ellsworth was a genius. And he developed the wax formulas. He developed these phenol plastics, which would be called condensite. And the interesting thing is condensite was developed just about the same time as another plastic called bakelite. And bakelite was developed in the next town over, and neither one knew about the other. But they soon did, because they started suing the hell out of each other because they were dropping on each other's patents. But the diamond disc record, to put it simply, was an acoustic marvel designed by Edison and in many respects damaged by Edison. He was choosing all the music, which was somewhat problematic. But the interesting thing is that the sound quality, the wearability, the records could be played and played and played and played. Whereas with a lateral 78, and you're using a steel needle, which is basically a polished nail, would eventually wear it out. But these records would keep playing and keep working. And a magnificent product, and there's so many different things to talk about, but that's just like a precursor. Brett, please.
I know that they had surface noise in the first run of diamond discs. You get a lot of surface noise, and in World War II, World War I, they had surface noise. Then when they got to the paper labels and stuff, it got a lot better on them. I really like the Red Star records because Edison didn't like the music, and there's a really lot of good music on the Red Stars.
It's funny. What's ironic, right? Edison, his company, he chooses the music. His taste in music wasn't very good. It wasn't popular at best. Let's say that. I won't say it wasn't very good. It wasn't popular. And plus, he was deaf.
Yeah,
I
I had
think
some
that's the
hearing
irony
loss.
of the
Yeah,
whole.
definitely. The
Yeah,
interesting thing is, as I mentioned too in our conversation about the Thomas Edison and the secret Thomas Edison, he wrote a note to his doctor and said to be a little deaf and to be the only one that knows exactly how deaf you are has its advantages. And of course, Edison couldn't hear that well, but he heard a lot better than he admitted. And
Yeah, I know in the
case in
back.
point, I brought these along. These are copies of his notes. And he would listen to the record. I repeat, he would listen to the record. And then he would write down his comments about the song. And this would go to each and every individual in the recording department, in the office, and then they would read through it and he would reject or say how good it was or how bad it was or how lousy it was or how it hurt his ear because it was too loud, things like that. And that was one of the fascinating parts of the diamond disc, is the fact that Edison devoted himself rather than with the cylinders. Edison was just observing. In the case of the diamond disc, Edison was basically starting a kind of a retirement. He wasn't doing things as busily as he had, and he focused all his energy pretty much on the diamond disc for a while.
Yeah, it's ingenious on the motors that the horn tracks with the record, and how all that works. The
Oh,
diamond
yeah.
disc motors they're absolutely bulletproof. Only thing that breaks on them is the winding crank spring, the little cog system that locks it like the ratchet
right.
pawn at the machines. That spring breaks. That's the only thing that'll ever break on them.
Wow. And you take, oh, sorry.
All the ones I have, just on that note, I don't think I've ever had service except for the one directly in back of me. I have we said it's a B80, which is early in the evolution. And I saw it at an auction upstate New York. And there were only a couple there was also an original Sonora tabletop that I had never seen before. And I ended up with both of them. And it really plays amazingly. The reproducer was fine. It really either was replaced or maybe I replaced it. It's possible because I go through the reproducers. What's amazing about it is that the turntable and the grill cloth are both the original mohair. And I have never seen that before, but when I saw it was mohair, I said, it's got to be original. Nobody put mohair on there. So it's really nice. And then I have an A100, which I bought from the original family that owned it. And I think an LU 15 or 75 or something like that.
London, I guess.
London, and my favorite of all is that I have, but I'm hoping you guys are going to tell me what other ones I really want, and that is my chalet in that gum wood that it was made in, and it weighs 1,000. I almost didn't take it. I had bought it, and somebody went to their house to pick it up. I said, "There's no way I'm going to carry this down the stairs. There's just no way. It weighs a ton."
Oh yeah.
And the gentleman who lived there said, "I'm not giving you your money back, so I better figure it out." So him and his wife picked it up and carried it down the stairs and put it in my car. But I love Diamond Discs. I wish the music was better, but I just think the mechanisms run amazingly, and it's hard to believe in the engineering. You could become obsessed with Edison just the way he builds things.
Over-engineered.
It really is amazing. Over-engineered.
Oh yeah, totally over-engineered. You get like a 250 horn, like an A250 or the C19, the big Edison, the top of the line one. The sound out of those are just tremendous. Even with a standard reproducer, it'll blow you out of the living room.
Yeah, I think that's the one Jack's been telling me that I need. I think that's what he just got, an A250. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I got it also from the original family. It's an amazing thing. They used it until 1919, and then they put it away, and it wasn't touched for 105, 106 years. And so the thing is still like shiny, and it's really bizarre looking because you usually find the old phonographs and the outside has totally changed from what the inside's like. In this case, the outside is like the inside. It's freakish. And it came with all the early recordings, which was really interesting. And some of them, the earliest of the discs didn't work too well in lamination. Dampness is the worst thing for a diamond disc. And over the course of 105 years, many of these records, if you look here, you'll just see I don't know if you can see it just totally separates and cracks, and
Right.
you can't play them. Half the records were like that. But the A250 is a phenomenal machine. And I've been learning an awful lot from Brett about all the workings of it. And he's been telling me about this, that, and how the springs are from the cylinder machines. And it's really quite amazing. And it's been a learning experience. So that's why Brett is a national treasure in that regard, just to give us help. Oh, go ahead.
Because you both, why I do these podcasts, because unfortunately, this is like an oral tradition collecting. One person tells another. And if we don't, and that's probably why Brett does his videos too, unless we deposit this down, you're not going to have new collectors because no one's going to be able to remember. They may collect, but there's going to be a mystery to it all. And there already is a mystery to it all.
Yeah.
We all have all the books that have been out of print forever. You could buy books at auction because they haven't been made in so long. So I buy everything, every manual I could find. I am inept at fixing anything, but I guess I still try.
Yeah, I consider myself Primitive Pete when it comes to fixing anything. I'm terrible.
I always like from you, Jack, Primitive Pete. No, the A250, the first version, almost this light maroon paint on it, pinstriped. The motor, the spring barrels on the motor come out of an A100. No, an A1. So it has bigger springs. It only has 2 springs in it. It's built like an absolute tank. That motor is nothing breaks on those. It's totally over-engineered till they went to the next motor down the road. The horns are faux painted on the inside to match the finish on the outside. They come apart like a signet horn. They're really well made. I bought mine 100 years ago for $500 and 500 diamond discs.
Wow.
The deal.
500.
No,
oh my God.
Oh man. And I picked up the part of the box that carry the diamond discs. I'm a young collector. I'm thinking, damn, these things are heavy.
Absolutely. I don't have it any longer, but I bought the Chippendale. I don't remember the number of that one. And so a woman said she had it and she only wanted, I don't know, 150, 200 bucks for it. She hadn't looked at it in years. It was shrink wrapped in her basement. I think I've told this story to you both. I went in, I couldn't move the thing. It was so heavy. It was shrink wrapped, so I had no idea anything about it. Turned out there were 100 diamond discs in the cabinet. So if you can imagine, it made the machine pretty heavy. Thank God there was a couple guys doing gardening there. And I said, guys, let me give you 50 bucks, put it in my car. And I could barely get it out. Thank God it had wheels. But the mechanism didn't work at all. There were like mice. I had to clean, like mice drop.
Oh, yeah.
And so I cleaned all that stuff out. And then I had a little problem. And I went to one of Brett's videos because it was just he said, He goes, loosen this screw, push this up, tighten the screw again, it'll be fine. This video, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So then I do it, and it works perfectly. So now I have, but unfortunately, the outside really needed to be totally taken apart and redone. And I didn't have that ability. I actually took it to somebody, and he finally gave up with trying to do it. So a collector that couldn't afford to go out and buy his own, I actually gave it to them and say, listen, I'm going to look for another one. I'm not bringing this to my collection. You might as well take it and enjoy it and start your journey with this.
It's an interesting thing that I found going through the notes at the Edison site is that as time went on, they tried to cheapen.
I want to stop you for 1 second. Now, Brett, isn't that amazing to hear him say that while I was at the Edison site, I took Edison's notes and I read this about what was going on. What's more amazing than that?
Well, to tell you the truth, that was a phenomenal honor for me to go through. I went through hundreds of his notebooks, and I did it all in room 12 in the laboratory. And that was Edison's room. So where the notes were written was where I was studying them. And so it was like being in the same space where it was all taking place, and then 100 some odd years later, being in the same space and reading it and studying it and getting the information that was being put down. But going through, not to lose thought of what I wanted to say here, going through the notes, they did, as time went on, to save money, they cheapened the cabinets.
Oh, yeah.
And they lessened the veneer. They made it thinner. So a lot of times with the really late cabinets, you just look at them the wrong way and the veneer comes off. You'll see that like with the Amberola 30s and stuff like that. The really late ones, they're always missing veneer and stuff. But the earlier the machine, they usually were a lot hardier, and they were dealing with a lot of really great furniture companies at that point that were really making the A250. They were being made in like Wisconsin and shipped to Edison. But if you do look for one of the big ones, I would recommend getting an earlier one than a later.
Oh, yeah. Get an earlier one.
Yeah.
Of which model are we talking about now?
Look at like a C250 or something like that. Would be.
Yeah, you can find those in gorgeous oak, inexpensive, under $500.
Yeah, I know a lot of the diamond discs. People don't collect them because they're big and heavy. And same thing with Victor. Unless you have something specific or particular that's rare, a lot of people don't collect them because they're big, and that's what makes them cheap.
That's the way it used to be years ago. When I first started collecting, back 100 years ago, I would go to the Salvation Army and walk in there, and they'd have a bunch of Victrolas, and they would be $45, and nobody really wanted them. And then all of a sudden, when everything changed and the Japanese really got into early phonographs and Edison stuff, the prices started going up like crazy. That's one of the main reasons why the prices went up so high. And then when the Japanese economy changed and they got tired of early phonographs, the prices started coming down again. It's an interesting thing, but...
We play one?
Huh?
On the bottom. You want me to play a diamond disc?
Sure.
Okay. Let me run upstairs. It's going to be bumpy. And let's see what I can do for you guys. Oh, no, it's fun. And then in the late, they built the Sherbert and the Beethoven, I think it is. So, I got it, honey.
Oh, the Edisonics, they're...
The Edisonics is the best ever.
While you're walking, one of the things that was also a treasure for me was to talk to Theodore Edison. And he was involved in the development of the Edisonic machines. And he was amazing. And speaking of amazing, look at all these machines.
Oh my God! Look at that.
Let's see what we got.
And he took it apart and reassembled it so it's like it came from the factory.
This is Santa's workshop for us.
That's all I said the whole time he gave the tour. It was like, oh my God, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to have one of those. I'm like, he had one side of the wall where all the machines I was looking for were just on one wall. You may have to turn that a little bit towards the machine a little bit more, Brett.
Okay, just a minute. Can you see that?
I see the top. Can you bend it down some or no?
Just a minute. Is that better?
No, it's worse.
There,
I'll probably have to hold it. How's that?
Yeah, just turn a little bit to the left. That's your right. Oh, that's my right. Turn it to your right. There you go. Should we just say forget it, check? Yeah, it's good.
How's that?
Now it's pointing up towards the sky.
Okay. Let me get it, and then I'll focus in on it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry because I'll cut out all the menagerie. And which one is that? That's the A250?
Yeah.
So is the A or B or C? Does it make it different?
Give me today. It's $52,391. It's electrically recorded.
Electrically, yeah.
Which we all know is adverse to what we usually feel about things. Everything wants to be acoustically recorded, but with diamond discs, you get both sides of the coin. First of all, that's an amazing disc. How's the finish on that, Jack?
It's beautiful.
And that's why you have an Edison diamond disc.
What reproducer is in there?
So Edison built, that's the standard reproducer.
Sounds amazing.
And then we were discussing the Edisonic, which has the bigger weight. And then the regular Edison has, this is the regular Edison one, and then this is the Edisonic. It has a much bigger weight.
Yeah.
And the sound out of those way different. Listen for a minute.
See, I've gone through my discs and cataloged them, but I haven't really listened to them all. You know, I mean,
it's hard to sometimes. Sometimes you have so many and different types, and
but a lot of the later ones I really need to spend some time with because the music is more palatable.
yeah, the earlier stuff has a great deal of influence from Edison. A lot of waltzes, a lot of sentimental songs and things like that.
And obviously he was very somewhat political, and then also...
And that sounds really good.
It does. It sounds amazing.
Edison was doing the dance craze. What you need is the dance reproducer, which is different. It's bolted together here. It has a bigger weight on it because The originals aren't bolted together right here. So let's take the same record and demo it on the Beethoven.
So that's what happened.
What?
My Chalet came with a dance reproducer, and frankly, I gave some to somebody to fix. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe the diamond was bad. I can't remember what happened to it, but I have to look. Maybe I actually have it.
Back there? That's the
Yeah.
Beethoven. So I'll play the same song again. We're getting a test of all the reproducers here.
Okay. Yeah, I think the diamond was bad, and then, I don't know. I think it may have ended up as parts for somebody else. I'm gonna have to liberate one from somebody.
You have to get another reproducer myself. It's easier to experiment and play, but you have a couple of them you can sit there, because I keep taking the same one apart.
I have an extra one now because I saw one in the original packaging, and so I bought it. They told me it was pristine, never used. Of course, it was shot. Somebody switched it out somewhere, but why?
Sorry to hear that.
Happens.
I believe that the Beethoven, like that one there, has the longest horn of any diamond disc.
Really?
They weigh a ton.
Yeah.
It has a totally different sound. The horn's way bigger. It almost sounds like a credenza, which they're trying to copy doing that.
That's cool.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Built different. Oh no, they built them in different horn sizes. We didn't discuss that. They built the 100, 150, 200, and 250 horn, and then they built the Edisonic horn.
Yeah, the Edisonics really has the long, the long piece going to the horn, which I really think Theodore was involved in that quite a bit. And because he told me something when I asked him about the machines, he said, bass, everybody wants to have bass. He said, it's unnatural.
Oh, no.
But what he would do, he had a double doctorate in mathematics. And what he did when he would listen to music, he would pinpoint looking at a horn and put holes in the horn for areas to enhance the sound.
Wow.
And I never quite understood that when he was explaining that to me. And years later, at the Edison site, I was up on the third floor where a lot of stuff was just stored, and I found some of his Cinemusic horns. He had developed something called the Cinemusic system. And I found the horns, and lo and behold, in the horns were various holes. And I said, aha, Theodore was here. You know? And he really was very instrumental in developing a lot of that later stuff for the Edison company, electrically. They were even playing electric recordings through klaxon horns and stuff like that, driving Edison crazy, actually.
Yeah, people don't realize that the phonograph, as we know it, that includes everything, no Victor and stuff. They don't realize that this came out of these guys' heads, and they had a slide rule, and there was no computers used to create all this stuff, even the Edison recordings. Like you said, this chemist was a genius to come up with this stuff, Edison's guy. And people don't realize that.
It's a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning and understanding in
Yes,
their own
indeed.
minds.
Yeah, a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trouble. It's
Oh, no,
something just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's fascinating to me. These guys were sitting down there. I wonder if this works. You know, their musical ear, they didn't have synthesizers and all this stuff. This is just totally raw music when you
Yeah,
listen to it.
indeed.
Yeah.
My image, I always think when we're talking about phonographs in general, is that some guy works for a living, works hard, gets his paycheck, and he just goes past the store one day and he sees the phonograph in the window. And he goes inside and hears recorded sound for the first time in his life and is mesmerized and puts down whatever it is, $10, $15, whatever. It's an exorbitant amount of money, even those days, and comes home and you just imagine the entire family sitting and listening to one recording for hours on end
Oh,
and
yeah.
being mesmerized by it.
It was magical. It was absolutely
It's magic.
magical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick story here for you. In the interviews I did with some of the people that made cylinders, I talked to some of those folks who were old enough to remember getting the early machines. And Walter Cronkite told me a quick story. He said his grandparents had Edison machines and his parents had Victor machines. He said they were a little bit more modern. He said, but it didn't matter where I was, but I had to wind them. And that was his job. He had to wind all the machines all the time. And he got all excited when I brought the Edison machine to record him. He said, let's have some Edison entertainment. And I put on By the Light of the Silvery Moon, and he jumped up and started dancing. And then he led everyone to a sing-along. We sang along with the cylinder, which I imagine years ago, people probably sat in their living rooms and sang along with the records. And so it was really an amazing thing that I was able to have someone who was born now 110 years ago, who had remembered that as a kid and then in his 80s sat there and was experiencing it all over again and sharing it with us. That's kind of like
It's
the
funny when
magic
you
of
said,
this.
when you were saying he had him wind, his job was to wind the machines. It reminds me of when we were kids that your dad would say, put on channel 4. You were the remote control. But there weren't a lot of channels, but he wasn't getting off the chair. He worked all day to change it. That was your job.
You got to tune it and do the antenna. And
We had an antenna on a roof because we lived in the middle of nowhere. But
Yeah, our neighbor lady, she moved to see a couple of kids, and we had a power failure a couple of days ago because Lawrence Electric in South Carolina was doing something. But she was talking to us on the front porch. We're sitting out there having a nice glass of wine. The lights went out. I said, okay. I said, we can go inside. I got candles. We can play some music. They come in. She looks at all the phonographs, goes, holy crap. So I got everything jumped in the living room, and I fired up the Vic 4, and I played a song. I said, okay, I'll play my Triumph E. I'll play a cylinder on there. This is a 35-year-old mommy with a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And she looks at an Edison cylinder. And this got me. She goes, holy shit. What is this? That's her comment. It's a really early record. The first records were these. They weren't flat. And I played it and couldn't believe it. And then I had the 7-year-old kid. I said, you want to crank up the Triumph? Oh, God, this is so heavy. But it was fascinating to me. I had no conception of how all this works.
it's so far removed.
Yeah, it's the cell phone. Our life's in the cell phone. It's like that. But I think it's really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Those
Yeah.
things. So I do have a tinfoil, and when I give tours in the house, I show them the parlor tinfoil, the Edison thing, and I go, when he invented this in 1877, November or December, whenever, I said, and when he went to do the patent thing, E.T. landed on the planet Earth. I said,
exactly.
First time they had been able to record and then listen to something, and they look, wow. And then they get really funny. I says, yeah, you have to scream bloody hell into this thing, and then it comes back. Hi, how you doing? It's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never used mine. I know that, and I could tell by what came along in the crate that it was in, that Charlie Hummel, who owned it, used to take it and carry it for demonstrations, but I've never tried. I don't have a horn for it, but I'm sure I could make something. But
Yeah, you could take
I'm not
any
sure.
kind of little
I'm not
funnel
sure
and
to use
do
it.
that. And then just scream your full head off.
Right.
Oh,
Because in
God.
the box, there's extra mica, there's extra a lot of things in the crate, and I just basically left it as half of a memory of a man that went everywhere to do these things,
Oh, yeah.
and haven't really messed with it. So
Charlie was a
Yeah,
dear friend of mine. He was a mentor to me. He used to sit and chit chat with Theodore, and we used to trade Theodore stories, which was fun. And it's amazing. You think about it now. Here we are in the year 2025. We're almost to the point where the last diamond discs were made nearly 100 years ago. It's really amazing to think when many of us started in this hobby, like the last diamond discs were like 40 years old.
it's funny because I've only been collecting. I'm coming up on 2 years in August. I can be a little obsessive.
Of course,
I
you're
will,
new. You're a kid in a candy shop.
and I tend to, giving my nature as a attorney, administrative law judge, arbitrator, whatever you want to call it, I tend to see, learn, obsess, synthesize, and then after I know everything, which is impossible in this hobby, that's probably why I like it, is to explore. And I hate to say it because I'm really a new collector, but I meet people that maybe don't have all the avenues that I have. But to people, I made great relationships. When I bought my first Edison standard, and it worked for a little while until it didn't, I couldn't find anybody to, I didn't know anybody to take it and have it fixed. I contacted someone up by where Wyatt lives, like Rochester or whatever, and I was going to drive it up there and leave it with them and let them fix it and then come back and get it. Only I didn't want to have it shipped. I didn't want everything. I didn't really know. I bought it at a auction in New Jersey that I drove and picked it up, and I remember that day completely picking it up. It came with 10 cylinders and a reproduction horn and getting it home. Like I was in picking it up and I'm like cranking it up, shoving the horn on, want to put a cylinder on the list. I was so excited. And the guy in the warehouse is like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just got to do that." Can you do that outside, please? Okay.
Yeah. Another thing about diamond discs, phonographs, is you can play a 78 record on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can play a 78 record on it once.
Or a 78 adapter.
Yeah.
That's what makes these things so great. Is this aftermarket thing right here? You don't have to change the speed from 80 to 78 RPM. You just throw one in.
No, but you do have to adjust it a little that the arm is in the middle of the throw, or else you have a little problem
You
at the
don't
end.
have to play a 78 on a diamond disc. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm not sure I ever knew that, but I bought I don't know if it was a Victor or a Sonora at auction, and it came with an adapter in it. So obviously, when someone was cleaning somebody's house, they grabbed it, threw it in, thought it went with it. Which when I saw, I realized it goes on the diamond desk and couldn't wait to try it, and it works fine. The reproducer needs to be rebuilt, but
Oh,
on the list of things to do, it's a little bit lower than most.
Yeah. And they have a volume control in them. They have that little plunger thing. I take mine out, but Ron Deffelson said take that out of there. It helps the sound. You can play a 78 on. That's what makes them so nice. You can have one phonograph. You can play everything.
and well.
Sounds amazing. That sounds like a very valuable record to me. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. It's like old school.
It's blues.
Blues.
Yeah. Those are hard to come by. I don't have much. I don't have many.
Interesting thing about a lot of those early ones was the fact that they were played through the Depression with one needle.
Uh-huh.
And they're usually beat to hell.
Now you know the reason why, right?
Yeah.
So I have, and Jack and I spoke about this prior, and he could tell the details of it. I have an ad that I bought and had it framed. It's in the other room where the majority of my phonographs are, and it talks about Edison going to the New York State Teachers Association, and all the room full of 6,000 or 7,000 teachers, and he has an Edison diamond disc on the stage where he has it behind a curtain. He's going to play the original and play the diamond disc so they can hear how full of it is. And Jack told me the story. I'll let him tell the story. And that is that the Edison taught the performers to perform like the diamond discs, not the diamond disc to perform like the performers, so it would sound more alike. And that just sounds so much like Edison and his thought process.
It's showmanship. There's no way an acoustic phonograph is going to be able to capture the full sound of a human voice, especially if they're singing full voice. So they taught them to mimic the phonograph more. And that really worked very well. Several people went to those tone tests, which is a whole chapter in itself with the diamond disc. They weren't using standard discs. They made special discs at the laboratory that were lacquered very heavily. So they were absolutely silent. And they could be played 2 or 3 times, and then they were tossed in the garbage. And as soon as the tone test was over, they'd pull out the standard discs and sell them. And a lot of these tone tests were taking place in the 1918, 1919 period, when those poor records were noisier than hell.
Oh, yeah.
And so the people were shocked. In the case of the phonograph I purchased, they couldn't stand the records anymore. They were too noisy. And so they bought a Victor machine and put this in the back room. A lot of people stopped buying the diamond disc record during World War I because the chemicals couldn't be brought in from Germany. Germany is where all the chemicals came from. And they tried making their own synthetic copies of it, and it just couldn't compare. And it was on the spur of the moment. And Jonas Ellsworth wasn't around to do a lot of that stuff. He was gone at this point.
Those chemicals.
Right? With that in mind, I want to mention one other thing that's very important with the chemicals. And there was a lot of nasty chemicals in the diamond discs. Phenol plastics can be very explosive, and they had several explosions while they were doing work on these things. I was going through some of the papers of some of the people that worked there, and they said we had a blow up the other day, stuff like that. But with rejected records, what they would do, they would take them to the furnace room and burn them. Now, the problem with this is all of those terrible chemicals are being put out through the chimney and spread all over West Orange, New Jersey. And it got so bad that people's dogs were dying if they were left outside. And they actually had a program at the Edison company. You could bring your dead dog and they would pay you for the damage to your dog. And that was from the discs. That's a very dangerous thing that they were doing. There's 2 different Edisons. There's Edison the inventor and Edison the industrialist. Everybody adores Edison, the inventor. He is mythological. He's an amazing character. The industrialist is a very different character. And in West Orange, I forget when, it was like around 1920, they were building a high school and they asked to name the high school for someone. Thomas Edison got one vote. That's it. So it's just an interesting thing to see that the two different Edisons, they never really merged. They were separate. And nothing could harm the inventor, but the industrialist was fair game.
And was he using the 125-foot cement horn for recording?
It was brass. It was a brass horn. Yeah, they tried. I have to go back a little bit. I was going through where he was doing some research on that. He was going in mathematics books and trying to figure out the way he put it to untangle sound. Because he felt that in a recording horn, if a trumpet played, if a clarinet played, and let's say a bassoon played, the sound waves from each instrument would crash into the other, and the notes would all get tangled up, and you would get recorded, tangled up sound, which sounds really bizarre. And he came to the concept that you needed 125 feet to untangle sound. And so what do? You build a 125-foot recording horn. The problem with the recording horn was it had massive echoes inside it. So they had to take it apart and put baffles in it, which totally defeated the whole purpose of the 125-foot horn already. And they tried it. It was very directional. It would work well with piano and perhaps a small group of players, but it was never a success, and eventually was sold for scrap during World War II.
Wow.
It's a fascinating period. Theodore told me he would go into the Columbia Street studio, and it was all lined with cow hair to keep it dead. And he said he'd walk in there and go, and he said the whistle gets sucked right into the walls. There wouldn't be any kind of echo, any kind of sound. Because Edison, when he recorded the diamond disc, he wanted a dead studio. And the idea behind the dead studio was that the machine would play the record and the sound would take on the atmosphere of the room itself, rather than what Victor was doing. He hated Victor records, by the way, despised them. And he used to say some of them should be soaked in calcium of lime. He'd be sitting there listening to a Victor record. And he called it an ear tickle he got from it. And he invented a little device. It was a square piece of cardboard. And he wrote on it, Victor ear tickle. And whenever he would listen to a Victor record, he put it over his ear when he listened. So to shield out some of the high-pitched sounds that came from the Victor records. And he would sit down and listen to a record that was recorded and send to his committee and say, this sounds like a Victor record. This is rotten. No good. I don't want a Victor sound. Victor can have it. He would just go off the rails if something sounded like a Victor record or sounded like Caruso. He hated Caruso. He said, people have to be told when a singer's good. I don't understand that at all, but it's
funny. Those are some of my favorite recordings, is those acoustic recordings of Caruso.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, there's millions of them out there because almost every Victor phonograph you buy from the era, that somebody has it, and they go, oh yeah, with these records, and it's the same set of Caruso records, right?
Yeah, and the thing is that Edison was sitting there shaking his fist at basically the music of the time, the entertainers of the time. He had this bizarre sensibility about music. He said Mozart, he couldn't understand why people liked the music of Mozart. He said, it sounds rotten to me. I'm like going, what was this man hearing? Or what wasn't he hearing in that regard? Yes, he could hear, but he had mastoid trouble. And that's the bones of the inner ear fusing. And he had 2 surgeries to loosen it. In those days, they basically just hit it like with a hammer, try to break the bones apart. But his hearing got worse as he got older. But everything was going through, it had to be filtered through Edison. And so Caruso was rotten. Jazz was for degenerates and nuts. He had other words for it, too.
Recorded it.
Huh?
Recorded a lot of jazz.
Yes, he did. Interesting thing, there's a point to this. He made a deal because he realized that was a cash cow. It was popular. So he would allow 2 records a month that he would not go through, and you could record anything you wanted, any kind of jazz. And that's where the good stuff came out. Otherwise, he would sit there and say, my God, the saxophone was never designed for jazz. He would sit there and write that stuff. The comments that he put down were absolutely frightening sometimes. He did have a director of artists and repertoire originally. It was Victor Herbert. And Victor Herbert, of course, the composer of operettas and all kinds of stuff, went to work for Edison for a few weeks and then told Edison what to do with his attitude and his ideas on music and left and refused to ever record for Edison again. That's why he went right to Victor. He originally was making cylinders for Edison, but then he told Edison to pack it and just left. He couldn't tolerate it anymore. So it's an interesting thing. With the diamond disc, you have this myriad of some really great stuff, fascinating things, and then an awful lot of, what's the word I want to use? Kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say junk. Like weird songs.
Well, it's just the corner street music hall. Kind of nothing
well,
really.
A lot of Hawaiian music too, which was popular then, though, right?
Yeah. That didn't have a long lifespan. The Hawaiian music. It was everywhere for a while.
Yeah.
We went through a Hawaiian craze. The other thing is, just to mention something while I was thinking about it, is that Red Star system. That was called the Music Committee. And I went through their notes at the Edison site, and I was reading their reviews, and they would listen to a song, and each would give a vote. And they say, magnificent, fantastic, wonderful, great tune. And then Edison would listen to it and say, rotten. And then, being total yes men, they said, yes, rotten. And the whole thing. So the music committee was basically a bunch of yes men who listened to what Edison said and then voted accordingly. Very rarely did they go in a different direction. And I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're right. But on the Red Star, I found Bill Murray and Ada Jones on Red Star diamond discs.
Yeah.
And I was shocked about that.
Oh,
I have one of my collections.
An interesting thing would be what they put on. Another thing that they did with the Red Star records is they took old stock and gave it a Red Star. Because Ada Jones was dead by, 1921. And the Red Star system didn't start till 23. And so that was probably something recorded like in 1914 or something like that. And so it got a Red Star.
Royalties. They didn't have to pay or anything anymore, so
they didn't. It's interesting. Going through like the cash books, you usually got paid for the record. And that was it.
Not for this, not anything.
No royalties. No.
Right, you got paid to sing once. It was like doing a
Yeah, and you got $25, let's say. Now today you sit there and say $25. That's not, but that was not bad. If you make 4 records that day, it's $100. That was That was doing pretty good. The average wage in 1910 was like $8 a week or something. So it was making good money. Only special artists got royalties. And in many respects, same for Victor. Victor, in many cases, just paid you for the record and you didn't get royalties. It was only the special artists who had special contracts, or an exclusive artist. Like Billy Murray became an exclusive artist for Victor. And then he received royalties, and also he received a certain cash payment every month and the required number of records he would make each month and stuff like that. And Edison did somewhat the same with a few artists, but not many, because he was very, very tight with the money. He said, "I am not the Bank of England." He would write that constantly on his things. And the diamond disc reflected that. Brilliant as it was, as magnificent as it was, as a technological wonder, it had a severe anchor, which was called Thomas Edison, because he was also the developer, the promoter, the savior, and also the jury, judge, and executioner of the diamond disc. And by 1925, 26, they were losing over $1 million a year in 1926 dollars. Wow. And it just got worse after that. They never saw a black ink again. And eventually it just died.
And Victor was moving in the other direction.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like they were playing all the popular songs, so more people were buying those records. Is that true?
Yeah, of course. The thing is, Eldridge Johnson wasn't picking the music. They had a team of music people. They had like great jazz people, and they say, what's the best thing to sell? Their whole idea is, when you make records, the whole objective is to sell as many of them as you can. That's the objective. That's why they're in business, to do that. Edison had a different kind of mode, being that he invented the process. I've often thought this, that being that he invented the process, he looked at the phonograph and the record like his own child. And he protected it. And he guarded it like a jealous father. That's not going on my phonograph. I write that down many times. There was a song called By the Sea, by the Beautiful Sea, that song. He wrote down, that does not go on my phonograph. That's obscene. And it sounds like a jealous father saying she is not going to the dance with him.
True. And there are no third-party diamond discs, right?
Oh, no.
So you don't, which you have in every other recording, you don't have third-party diamond discs ever.
No one else made them. No one else made them.
Right.
No one else, in many respects, not a lot of people wanted to be involved with them because it's sad. It's a very sad story. It had all the aspects of being so brilliant and really could have taken over the industry had it been handled a little differently.
So just imagine that others could have been allowed to make diamond discs. You look at, obviously, music, there are many, but think of Apple computers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the money, they were great, the software was amazing. It wasn't until, even iPhones, it wasn't until they allowed third-party manufacturers to make apps and programs that these things took on a life of their own. And the diamond disc had that opportunity, giving its ability and its sophistication, that if the third parties were out there recording and playing, they would have had a much longer lifespan.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. If you listen to an Edison disc from 1912, 1913, it is incredibly good. It's beyond incredibly good. It's frighteningly good. And I find it startlingly now that time, after listening to a Victor record and then listening to one of these Edison recordings, the public must have gone, wow, this is the wizard. Edison had developed this amazing system. And it started with this great bang. And it just waffled along. And by the time that Edison stopped picking the music and he got involved in goldenrod research, and Charles, who loved to drink a little bit, quite a bit actually, he used to go to all the speakeasies in New York City, in the Village, and there'd be all kinds of jazz bands there. And he would sit there and say, my dad has a recording company. And that's why you almost have a sonic history of Greenwich Village in the 1920s. A lot of the bands that recorded were playing in Greenwich Village in New York City in the 1920s. It's a bit of a sonic history. Wow. And that was really an amazing thing that one of the things Charles did that was really good was bringing those bands in, but they just couldn't make ends meet. And I'm sorry to sit there and talk so much here. There's so much to talk about with this stuff. And
I know Brett's probably feeling the same way I do. I never hear this stuff, and I'm glad to hear it from you than read it out of a book.
I interviewed some of the people that worked in the record manufacturing plant. And the work doing all that, it was so expensive to make the records. They had this profit margin that was just this tiny little bit because all the expense in making this composite record. Victor just went plop like that and you had your record. It just took 30 seconds to stamp it, if that. But we're talking several minutes with the diamond disc. And half the time it wouldn't come out quite right, and then they'd stamp rejected on it, and it would go and get cooked to be blue. But it was extremely hot, extremely difficult, extremely smelly, and a lot of people in the town didn't like the smell that was coming from. You think of all those chemicals. It must have been horrendous in that area.
Yeah. So, do you guys want to talk about the thing you're working on, or you want to leave that for another day?
No, I guess we could talk about it, right? Why not?
It's related, right? So, there we go. You may begin. I'm sure I understand it as
I'm just having a little fun, and I want to share it with Brett because let him tinker with it too, because he's Mr. Wizard when it comes to phonographs and stuff. I found something that worked pretty well for old phonographs, and as I like to put it, it's like a cure for arthritis of the reproducer. And older phonographs, the diaphragm becomes very stiff, and it's not like it once was, which was very pliable. And so I use coin holders. And a coin holder is very cushy, and it allows the diaphragm to vibrate like it hasn't vibrated in years. And
so by coin holders, you mean those paper things you get at the bank?
No.
See, it's not thin, and it's very pliable. You can squeeze it, and you can. It's hard to. Let me find a better one here. Sorry, I didn't.
Jack sent me a couple.
This is how they would come to you when you would buy the coin. There's a whole big thing. Fascinating thing about this is a coin holder, and you'll see.
I have no idea what that is.
And I'll take it apart. This is, you take the middle out of it, and that's where you'd put your coin.
Oh, so it's a coin holder for collecting coins.
Yes, and then you would put it inside then you would put it inside the capsule to hold the coin.
Okay, now I know what it is.
I have always been one to look at anything and try it once and see what happens. I even tried a thing for hair, a hairband, and put it in and played a record, and it worked pretty good. But I tried these, and I was amazed. I was amazed how good the sound was. And so,
So
Brett,
that allows more spring because it's not as restricted.
Right.
That's true Edisonian thought process there. Try everything, and whatever sticks to the wall is going to work for us.
yeah, why not? I've always tried to. I've been doing this in the 1990s. I have a whole notebook of various types of materials I tried for diaphragms and stuff. And then I just put it away and stopped doing it. And then all of a sudden, now in my more mature years, I'm tinkering again. And this came up just by accident because I collect coins.
So is there what's in there? I'm sorry, I never took one apart. So there's a regular gasket and a diamond disc
There's two.
reproducer.
Yeah,
There's two, one on each side that go on both sides of the diaphragm.
very thin
So
rubber.
so whatever they're made of or whatever it is. So what that fabric allows the entire diaphragm to vibrate so
Right.
that the vibration is grander,
Yeah,
right?
yes. And also, and to
Seems
share this with everybody, I'm not trying to, I
seems
don't want to make this any,
pretty simple,
that it's the KISS method. That's the most
I
important
guess.
thing, that keep it simple, stupid, the old saying, right? But the other thing is you have your restraining screw, cap, or whatever. What's the term for it? A restraining thing. Ring.
The top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The restraining ring, which screws on. You use that with a coin holder and the diaphragm. Only one. You don't need two. Only one. So the first thing you put in is the coin holder. Then you put the diaphragm. You put the little ring thing, and then the screw-on clamp, but not tight. Here's the thing that gets rather interesting. With a Victor or Columbia or under type of reproducer for lateral, you want an airtight reproducer. I found that with a little bit of an air leak, you have more bass. And so you can turn that ring around and adjust it. It's almost like a tone control. And so you can make it sharper or duller. And depending on the record, you can adjust it for the record. It's fun.
I feel a video about this in Brett's future.
Yep.
That would be
I
fun.
asked Jack off.
Yeah, I'd love to have you do it and see what happens.
I'm sure he's going to take it to the nth degree and do.
Yeah. And I want to share with people, let them have fun. There's nothing like having a brand new diaphragm. Okay. There's this, but a lot of times people can't afford to get all the fancy stuff, or just as something to have at home and try it and be a little bit of throw a little Edison. They can tinker a little bit and maybe feel a little bit more with the hobby doing that.
Absolutely. Brett has these ideas all the time. You see him in his videos.
Oh, I know.
What I did here is this. He'd be like, this piece doesn't really work. They really weren't thinking when they did it. But I made one on my lathe that's brass and it'll last 1,000 years. And now if you insert that, and I'm like, yeah, Brett, I have a lathe in my back bedroom. And I would have cut my fingers off a long time ago anyway. And then he pulls it out like it came out of a Cracker Jack box. And then he puts it in and it goes into the thing and then he plays it. It sounds amazing. And you're like, wow.
Yeah, I have learned, as I have mentioned before, when I'm having a problem with something, I sit down and look at the various videos and say, what did Brett do with this? So I learned, my Amberola 5, I was just absolutely mesmerized. I was watching every little thing that you were doing with that because it helped me an awful lot with mine. And I think I speak for probably everyone in this community that we owe you a debt of gratitude. for
Oh,
what you do.
Absolutely.
well, that's
Forever. Yeah.
That's
We all
that's
collect and we all feel the
yeah.
greatness of collecting and playing and listening and putting ourselves, but we don't all give back like you can. We don't have the ability. You have more than the ability to do these things. You have everything that makes those videos great is what makes this hobby great.
I
Knowledge.
have to dumb.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I have to dumb them down. My producer gets mad at me.
I hear her. I hear those corrections. So what is that you have in your hand?
I get in trouble. I've been married 50 years. So I'll do
Wow,
the video.
congratulations.
Cheryl
That's
goes,
an
Congratulations.
amazing thing.
yeah. What did you just say? I said, no, we have to redo it. You have to do this in Dick and Jane because they like how to. I said, okay, let's do Dick and Jane. It's
I
like,
go back when I did that story I told you about the diamond disc. I must have had to go back 5 or 6 times before, and all it was turn a screw, pull a bar, tighten it again, and it wasn't turn a screw. I think it was a nut, and I, it just when you did it, it looked so simple. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're talking those diamond discs that the shaft, that the whole mechanism rides on, and also is attached to the horn. I know you know exactly what I'm talking. And of course, better yet, I stripped the thing when I did it. So I was like, good thing it's in the position that it works now because I'm not moving it again.
Yeah.
I was like, well, now tell Brett that I stripped it.
oh, no,
So
I did the last video. Like, I've never done like a whole ground up resto, like on this Vic 2 humpback I'm doing slowly. And I showed them how to take the corner columns off. I stripped
I,
everything down.
I saw that.
I came back and I said, this is how you do this. I said, but the high glue, a lot of the high glue on the corner columns, it doesn't come off, so you have to scrape it. And I did the video on how to shellac it and then fix the corner column so when you put it back on, you know, the piece here and the corner column, you want it flat against the wood. You want to look original, right? In 3 days, we got over 900 views on it.
Wow.
Yay.
That's amazing.
The most important
Yeah.
thing is this is knowledge is not to be kept, it's to be shared.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's the most important thing that we should do in this hobby is I have a friend here in Chicago. He's a young collector. And so I said, I call you my Edison. And I'm tutoring him and teaching him. And he is fascinated with recording on wax. And he's starting to make wax recordings. He's bought like 30 wax cylinders so far. And he's making all kinds of recordings. Now he's looking into making disc. He wants to make disc wax recordings. He's going to really be a fascinating character in this hobby as time goes on because he just started like same time as you 2 years ago. And that's always good to see. And that's why we really want to share as much as we can and teach people as much as we can. You can never write it all down.
Oh, yeah.
You'll forget things.
These videos are selfish to me. I learn and get myself involved with gentlemen like you that I have no business talking to because my knowledge is limited. But
A journey of
I
1,000
really,
miles begins with one step, as the old saying goes. So,
well, a couple steps and tripped and falled a couple times. I was lucky that my apartment that I have everything in was empty when I started collecting. I had a room that it was totally empty. It only had things that my ex-wife threw out on the front lawn, and it basically all needed to be thrown in the garbage. But I didn't have the wherewithal to go through it. And when I started collecting, I said, "Oh, I'm going to clean this room. I'm going to put a table. We're going to put a couch, and I'll put a couple phonographs around. It'll be a nice place to sit." Now you can't walk into the room, but that's the nature of it, right? That's the
I
nature of it.
confess, with our situation, Jason is an absolute angel with this. We're going to go out and look at some records this weekend. And that's not of an interest to him, but he's willing to do that. And then we're going to go do the show in Chicago.
All right.
And so he said, "Are you ready to go to the show?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, I'm all excited." So it's always good to get support. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brett, if you're ever looking to restore a wood horn that has cracks in it for videos, I'd love to send it to you, and glad to whatever it costs to restore it. But I don't know what to do with it. I mean,
Victor?
I'm sorry?
Victor horn?
No, it's a Triumph horn.
Okay.
I think I may have sent pictures. The elbow is peeling a little bit. When I showed it to Wyatt, he goes, "I wouldn't touch it because it's still all original, even it's peeling." But I don't know about that. And the wood is just separated on where it was glued. So it's a magic. What do they call it? Music.
It's a Music Master horn.
Music Master
Yeah.
horn.
He's a man horn, yeah.
And it's in great shape, other than the thing coming apart. And I've had lots of offers of people who wanted to fix it, but I've been so hesitant because you don't know. So anyway, I think that's pretty much a place to end it. If you
Yeah.
feel
All right.
it is.
Oh, this was
I'm sorry.
this was great fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy it a
Fun.
great deal.
Yeah.
I think all of us do. If whatever topics you want to do, this one was on diamond disc. I know we really didn't go through machines or anything, but
Yeah.
I get great responses when we just talk about our experiences, because I think other collectors realize that they're having similar experiences.
Mhm.
And even the time, Brett, when we spoke to Wyatt and Joe and Tracy that time, I got great. Well, everybody spoke about the first machine they bought, or a machine they bought, or how they chased it and fixed it and whatever. And they were telling those stories. I didn't really tell many, but they all told stories. And it was a great response, because other collectors are going through those first times too. And they realize that people like you guys who know everything — I know no one knows everything. You don't need to remind me of
No.
that. But know a great deal, and sometimes, and also realize that you've gotten there. You started where they started. You started with a machine that a looked like it would never run, and now and you're never going to sell it because you know that was the machine you first bought.
Yeah. The
That's
interesting thing about knowledge is that the more you learn, the more you realize how little
Oh, yeah.
it's. Edison wrote about that.
I
He
know.
said, like, every time I keep learning, I discover how little I know. And it's important.
It's funny you were talking about the music and the way it went down the horn, and he thought it would get entangled. And I think about molecular theory and string theory and all those things, that it sounded like that's what he was talking about, even though he had no idea what those things were.
No,
You know,
he didn't. He also was fiddling with atoms. He was doing a whole thing. He filled a whole book with his ideas on how atoms work. And it's interesting stuff. There's so much about Edison that 99.9% of people don't know, because it's not in what we might call the popular culture. When I went through the many books, I didn't want to see the successes. I wanted to see the regular stuff that was going on. That's where you learn about the people. You learn about the various things, because the success doesn't tell you anything. It tells them they were successful. But when they fail, then they sit there and how they go through things. Like, they were coming up with gasketing material called goop. GOOP. And their idea was to use goop in the diamond disc reproducer. And it was Vaseline with a binder. And it worked perfectly making the ring, but then it soaked in everything. And it was a bit of it turned into a big goop. But nonetheless, I don't want to talk more because we'll get going again. And we should do another of these and just talk about what was going on in the lab, what things that they were doing and experiments that they were doing, because it's fascinating stuff.
Whatever you like to talk about, I'm willing to talk about, because whatever it is, I'm sure I have no idea what it is. And I think others listen and others enjoy it. Certainly our other collectors too.
Okay.
I thank you
for
not only your time today, but all you both do for the collecting community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
First words I spoke in the original phonograph. A little piece of practical poetry. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.